And it's probably going to become worse because humans are people that by nature battle with each other. But that doesn't mean we got to live that way.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Humanity 2.0 podcast, where we are talking real talk with real humans about humanity. Today's guest is Larry Onan, not Onan, but Onan. And he is here to tell us about his outlook on humanity, share what he's doing, and just plain out inspire the world. So let's ask Larry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. And so thank you very much. Great to be with you today.
Yes, it is. It's a cold day, but you're going to warm everyone's heart, Larry. I know it. And thanks to Podmatch for matching us. Podmatch is an excellent platform for guest and host where you can find the absolute best guest, case in point. And you can also find an excellent host for your guesting opportunities as well. So thank you so much, Podmatch. Larry, humanity is something else. What's your opinion on humanity right now, this moment?
Well, I think humanity right now is very polarized, but it's nothing new to the culture. We think what's happening in our culture today is stressful and brand new, and it's never been the worst. When you go back into history, I go back into the Garden of Eden in Genesis, the second chapter of the Old Testament, and there was a crisis back there. They had a warm relationship with their Heavenly Father, and because of some stress and some changes in their lives, I think it's because they got caught up in what they wanted rather than what they should be giving. But that the human story of chaos started a long time ago, and we just reinvent that from time to time. So, if you got an audience out there thinking it couldn't be worse, yeah, it's been just as bad. And it's probably going to become worse because humans are people that by nature battle with each other. But that doesn't mean we got to live that way. I have a strong commitment every day. In fact, just this morning when I was getting up, I said, okay, the joy of the Lord is my strength, not the joy of the news today is my strength. And then I got to discipline myself not to watch the garbage because I start to believe it. So I think there's a point of life can be lived with a thriving mentality, or it can be lived with a surviving mentality. And that's a choice that I make every day because and I think too many times we don't make the choice to live a life that we will thrive. We wake up thinking how bad it is rather than how blessed we are to have another day to live. So I'm big on living a life that's worth living.
I love that so much, Larry. See, I told you were going to be amazing. Told you guys. So choosing to thrive every day, that is so important. And I really do empathize with everything that you're saying here. I do the exact same. I wake up every day. I thank God for this day and for everything that happens, even the bad things that happen, because we grow from them too. But most definitely choosing to thrive, that choice that we make every day is so important. And then what we do after we wake up is very intentional, and we have to move with purpose, and then always trust that we're going to be okay, or believe that we're going to find a way and forge a path, because that too is present in history as well.
Well, Vanessa, you mentioned the word intentional. I'm really big on that word, what you said there. I think many people don't realize that life has got to be lived by a choice we make. And the book I wrote was called Intentional Living and Giving. And it wasn't just to have a fancy title. The word intentional is extremely important to me there because I choose to do things, and I choose to wake up. Somebody told me a number of years ago, at your age, Larry, don't jump out of bed the minute you wake up. Sit on the edge of the bed and wiggle your ankles, they told me. So, and I do that because, well, first of all, it was good advice. But when I do that, I say, okay, this is a new day that you give to me. I will rejoice and be glad in it, because this is the way that you plan my day. So even intentionality starts with when I get horizontal out of the bed. And then throughout the day, I've got something on my website that anybody can download. It's wallpaper for your phone. And it's the 5 choices I make today. And I've got different wallpapers that people can choose. But what I'm trying to do is help people realize that those choices do make a big difference in how you live today. It is
Mm.
intentional thinking that is going to cause us to be effective in our humanity.
Yes, 100% agree. I can't wait to share the link to your website so people can go and have a look at that. Man, that's amazing. So, a good question for you, because I understand, and everyone will understand when they review your bio and your background, that you have a major foundation and background within religion, within God, within faith, however you wish to put it. So, my good question for you is that culture and religion tell stories about what it means to be human, and you have a story or a quote or even a scripture that captures humanity. What is it, and tell us why?
Well, I'm maybe an advantage or a disadvantage. I was born after World War II, so I'm getting up there in the year side. I don't act like it, but I'm up there. And I was raised in a very religious, traditional home. In fact, my father was a church planter. He started 2 or 3 churches in his day, and I was a preacher's kid, one of those ombre kids that had to go to church every Sunday because Dad showed up and I showed up. I saw there that people were struggling even growing up because they were living a life trying to live something that they could not live. They were trying hard, but they did not have the foundational tools to do that. And by the time I got to college, and I was majoring in theater arts, believe it or not, I was just into theater all the time. I knew I was going to be in Hollywood or New York. Now, maybe they didn't think I was going to be there, but in my mind, that's where I was aiming. And I pretty much, by the time I got to University of Colorado my junior year, Christianity was not my highest priority. My faith had said, okay, this is a lot of hypocrisy. This is a lot of people trying. It's a lot of bickering. I just saw the downside of people living life all by themselves, trying hard but not making it. And it was really in an experience in my junior year at the university that I ran into a couple of engineering students that were living life because they just enjoyed Jesus. They just enjoyed the joy of life every day. And that was so totally different from me. My experiences, I was in classes at the university where everybody was acting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'd put on different personas to escape who they really were in humanity. And I started to realize this is not the way you live life. That's what you do on the stage. I love picking up parts and characterizing those parts. But when you start living your life as a fake, then something's really wrong with you. And many people are living a life with an expectation of what they think they should be. And I came to grips with that reality that I could do this not on my own. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul has a passage to the Roman church. And he said, the very things I try to do, I cannot do. The things I hate is what I love. The things I love is what I can't pull off. He was a miserable creature. And I was a miserable kid as a junior at the University of Colorado because I was trying to live a religious life. And I'm not into religion. I'm into a faith life. And when I started to come to grips with that with my friends there at the university, it transformed everything I did. It was a personal relationship rather than a religious relationship. I wasn't trying anymore. I was living day to day. I was living the way we were designed to live, frankly. And so that was a real turning point, really. It's just coming to grips with who I was and admitting that as a human being, I was a mess. But I could be victorious because there was a plan for me to be victorious. Well, that's been 60 some years back, 70 years ago. And that's not changed because the choices I started making sense. And I began living a life of fulfillment. And so I hear people say, well, you don't know life like I know life. You don't know what's happened to me. If you knew my circumstances. And I'm thinking those are all things in your life that God has put there so that you can learn from them and grow from them. And, your downside could be your greatest upside. And, crazy thing about it is we don't grow in our spiritual side unless we run into conflicts in our physical side. It's really crazy because we would like it to be just easy going, easy peasy forever and ever. And life said, no. God said, no, if you're going to grow, I'm going to have to put you under a little bit of stress because you need to stretch your faith muscle.
Mm.
My grandson in Dallas, Texas, is opening a nonprofit called Intentional Faith. And the intentional aspect, again, is there. But the idea is faith can be something that you choose to work out every day, and we can help other people do the same thing. So it's a life choice, and it radically changed for me. And it, fortunately, I've enjoyed every minute of it for a long time. That doesn't mean there's not bad news. Bad news is really a part of spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. I agree that it's what you do with that bad news. Do you internalize it? Do you utilize it as an example to push yourself and propel yourself forward in a more positive direction? And so I have two follow-up questions for you based on that gorgeous experience you just went over. Well, three, really. The first one is, having journeyed in your faith initially, and then meeting these people and discovering their joie de vivre, their joy for life, and their I guess position. What did it do for you internally? Did it just make you question everything? Did it just automatically spark this, love for God and faith, or how did that work for you?
Well, we're real beings. We have real issues. So it wasn't an easy journey. It was a choice that I decided to make. I think we think that sometimes the God is the one that just moves us around and does all, we're like puppets. No, he's not a puppet. He gave us a free will. So I went through a little bit of stress to get there. And then when I got there, I made a choice again that I was going to follow. In my case, I follow scripture. And I'm really a big one. The most popular book in the entire world is a thing called the Bible. Even today, it's selling more than any other book in the world. So it's got a lot of wisdom there. So you follow the wisdom and the direction that you find there. You cannot go find it by yourself. You're not smart enough to figure that out. But when and so in that point of stress, I had to make some decisions. I'm going to choose to do something in this direction. I'm going to choose to let God empower me. That's not a spiritual hoodoo religious experience. It's a choice of just believing what Scripture says. And when I started to do that, then I started to learn how to walk that way. But Vanessa, many people are like my daughter years and years ago, and she's now 48 years of age with a couple of kids, but she had trouble riding her bicycle at age 5. And she liked to watch the back wheel. She was concerned about the back wheel, the bicycle. If you've ever ridden a bike, you cannot be concerned about the back wheel. You've got to be forward thinking, heading in a direction. And many times I took off the training wheels 4 or 5 times, and she could not get it. And one time she came to me and said, "Dad, I want you to take off the training wheels. I want to go for a bike ride with you." And I thought, okay, here we go again. Her steps and stages in growth had came to the place that she was not concerned about the back wheel because she became a focus. And sometimes we need training wheels to get on our feet. And other times when we get it, we can start to specialize in the task of riding the bicycle. My daughter and I rode the bike for almost 2 hours that afternoon, me on mine and she on hers, because she had no longer had the issues. She had gone through steps and stages in growth. And I think sometimes we get anxious ourselves because we're not growing fast enough. And maybe you're going through what you need to. Vanessa, 10 years ago, I mean, this is a good example. 10 years ago, my wife, 45 years, died of a glioblastoma brain tumor. They call it a GBM. Well, it was an 18-month journey, but I did learn the first day that she had it what it was. If you go to major medical sites, you can look up GBM, and you're going to find out this terminal disease is treated in the following ways. That's what 2 of the major sites said. I thought, my gosh, this is terminal. Now, we're all terminal, but this is terminal in the sense that even medical says you're going to die from this. Mm-hmm. It took me 18 months. Now, that wasn't the 18 months that I really enjoyed living in that sense. I was a caregiver. We were doing all kinds of medical treatments. I was caught up in helping her get better. So that was the trial time. But when she did pass away, she changed addresses, Vanessa. That's all she did. Her eternal life was already living. She just changed addresses and where she's doing it. But I said to myself about 3 or 4 months later, Larry, you're here and she's changed addresses. What are you going to do next? And I thought, okay, I need to write down some things. And I believe a real confident thing, if it's not in writing, it does not exist. And I wrote down 10 things that I will do going into the future. Now, the reason you write them is it lets you edit what you wrote. If you're just thinking about it, it's like a drone on steroids and you can't control it. But when you write things down, now you can go back and say, I want to refine that. How do I live with that? How do I change it? And 2 or 3 times a year, I still visit my I wills, because the I wills keep me focused on what I should be doing. I am fearfully and wonderfully made for a purpose, and I need to be discovering and living out that purpose. I am not here by mistake. And I think many people think, well, why was I even born in the first place? What a mess my background was. No, you were fearfully and wonderfully made. Now learn what that fearfully and wonderfully made aspect is going to do, because that is where you're going to get the joy of living. There's a real difference. Human beings have got confusion about joy and happiness. Happiness is emotional hype. That's a birthday party. That's who's going to win the Super Bowl or who's not going to win the Super Bowl. I can be happy doing a lot of things, but that is usually triggered by emotion. Joy comes from my internal heart, a choice that I made that I'm going to walk a certain way. So I can be joyful in attending my wife's memorial service. That doesn't mean I'm happy about it. You get the difference?
Right.
And
Yes,
I think we get all confused that, well, you're not being joyful today. Well, you can't really judge my joy. You could say I'm not really being happy today because that's stimulated by the circumstances, the culture. No, I'm not happy about political environments today that polarize people. But that doesn't change my need to be joyful in the Lord, because he's given me a new day. So joy is much more deeper than the happiness. And we sometimes think, well, if I'm not being happy, ho, 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 then I must be failing. No, sometimes that is the time when you're going to grow the most.
Yes. 100% agree. I feel like that happiness is that temporary, and then the joy is the everlasting, still longer.
Yeah, and you've got to choose to even enjoy the joy. I will rejoice in the Lord. The joy of the Lord is my strength. I am reminding myself that is where my real, that's the artesian water well that I drink from. Now, I could end up having a car accident today and not be happy about it. But that doesn't change my joy.
Right. I do want to say I'm sorry for your loss. However, I am so overjoyed that you were given your life partner, the person that God intended for you, and you had so many wonderful years. So I tend to think of the joy and the goodness of that union as opposed to, the passing of. So I'm so thankful for you.
And Vanessa, I'd see it the same way. Grieving is a different emotional thing for everybody. That's a part of life. But my grieving was change in address does not mean I'm still on target. Yes, you can feel loneliness, and yes, you feel emotions that come with that. But that is it's not a loss in that sense, because I know exactly where she's at. So
yeah, I love that change in address. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, good. It's great.
Recently, I was told a phrase because I was listening to a podcast for another podcaster, and I was watching them. They were talking to another person regarding faith and just watching from a distance. Yeah. And one of them said something very profound that I never really heard before. I love it when I hear things I've never heard before. And he said, the Bible was written to us, not for us. It was either backwards. I may be having it backwards, that it was for us, not to us, or to us, not for us. Do you know that phrase? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mentioned already, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Think of the Bible as God communicating to us in writing so that it does exist and we can learn from it. If he'd just given us thoughts in cyberspace and in our mind, we never would have captured them. And the Bible is a unique book because it's really 16 different, or it's over 60 books written over 1,600 years. And they are stories of life experiences of human beings going through the worst and the best.
Mm.
Now, the first two chapters introduce us without the pain. The second chapter in the book of Genesis introduces man doing something independent from God. But God said, I'm going to continue to give you a book, and it's been around for a long time. There's more factual history on the Bible and about anything out there. There's more evidence of what happened in the Old Testament than George Washington lived, okay? So it really is an amazing tool. And if we can learn from what's in writing, it's there to help us. So it is there to help me. It is written for me in that sense. It's written to me because I need it. I need to have that wisdom. I need to have that. But it's for me so that I can get on board and fulfill the life that I was created to live. If you don't have some kind of a guidance, like today I'm living in Southern California and you're in Dallas, Texas. If I got in my car and I said, I'll see you in 2 days in Dallas, and I got in my car and I started driving north, I would end up in Seattle in 2 days, which has nothing to do with Dallas. But that's a choice that I made to go there. But I'm telling you ahead of time, the map is important to us because you're expecting me to show up in Dallas because I said I would be there. If I took off and went north on Interstate 5 from Los Angeles, you would never see me. Mm-hmm. The Bible is in writing, so it becomes a map of my daily guide. And there's a lot of helps there. It's a lot of stories of people that went through bad experiences and good experiences. There's a lot of pithy little truth nuggets all the way through there, every place. I think of one of them in the book of Deuteronomy in the middle of, this is Old Testament stuff, really old. But they were talking about money back in Deuteronomy. And God said, I don't need your money. Oh, that shocks you because everybody's wanting money from you. But God said, I don't need your money, but I do need to teach you how to keep me first in all things. So your money becomes a way of teaching you on how you use your money. Well, that's just a little nugget in the middle of nowhere. One of my favorite verses is a guy named Jabez in the middle of the book of Chronicles, and nobody likes to read Chronicles. It's the Chronicles of names of people. It's a begat, and pages of it. And in the middle of that, there's almost a pregnant pause that said, and then along came a guy named Jabez. And he prayed 4 things. God met his request. And the next verse is begat. And you're thinking, why in the world did God put this in the middle of all of this other boring stuff? But that is a key example how God, in writing, helped Jabez know what to pray. And he helps me because I can pray that for anybody because it's a simple prayer that I can pray for my friends. So I pray that for myself and I pray that for my friends in the middle of a very, very boring book. So I think that God has a way of saying, if you watch what I'm doing, you'll see me working and you can pattern your life in the right direction. If you don't go to the right source of the map, I will never figure out how to get to Interstate 10 and head to Dallas, Texas. That's a map. I've got to have that out. I've got to be able to see where I'm going or I'm going to end up in the wrong place. So maybe the answer is it's both 2 and 4.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's both and,
right.
But it's different purposes where the 2 comes in and where the 4 comes in. It's for me because it keeps me going. No, it's for me because it keeps me going. It's to me because God wants me. He designed human beings to be responsive to him. You know, when we think humanity is here all by itself, no. In fact, humanity was put on earth for one purpose, and that was to steward God's stuff. In the book I wrote, Intentional Living and Giving, it's all about that lifestyle of being a steward of somebody else's stuff. That's what the book is. The whole core is the practicality of how that works in our life and how we get fulfillment out of being who we were created to be.
And we'll definitely get to that and your other work as well here in a moment. Sometimes we observe that there are people of faith who are very extreme. And then there are people like you who are amazing and awesome and welcoming. Do you understand what I mean? By the extreme people, I don't really want to come out and say it, but then, there are people that are very extreme and they, disregard other types of people, or they do things in the name of God that are just, oof.
Oh,
What is your opinion on those people?
Well, I think many of those people, they've got an agenda, Vanessa. There's an agenda out there. They found a way, in many cases, to make money or to manipulate a crowd. And they then pick and choose. They do a lot of cherry picking for fruit that they want to manipulate to you. Most of the people, there's a whole book chapter in my book about deception. Deceivers want you to have them as your authority. And then they'll manipulate you to do things that you really don't want to do. And they are not putting out real truth. They're putting out truth that helps them accomplish their objective. And I think many times we're caught up with, he looks so good. So one person said a few years ago, I voted for so-and-so because he's so handsome and he speaks well. Those are two of the worst reasons to vote for somebody. He's handsome and he speaks well. Maybe there's going to need to be some wisdom coming out of his mouth, even if he doesn't look good. But I think sometimes we get caught up in what they look like, and we start to think, I want to be like them. And that really is evil coming out of them because they're manipulating you. I just was reading before our podcast this morning of a guy that's been exposed after years and years with a lot of sexual abuse and using the internet to fool people that he actually could read and be forecasting the future for them. He was manipulating people and also into sexual abuse with other people while being a really religious guy. Really a sad story. But people were following him because of the things that he was saying. I really want people to be very careful. There is no reason for you to get caught in deception if you know what deception looks like. Deception is a fun thing. Not funny, not fun, but it's there. Deception is only a few degrees off of real truth. Now, when we go into our experience and we go into cults and other really false religions, we get far enough away that we feel like we can identify that problem. The further from truth it gets, the more it's evident for many people to see it. But deception is only degrees away from real truth. And sometimes we'll say, well, that was his interpretation. Well, it's so close to the truth that it becomes an interpretative issue. No, we got to be very careful that deception is just plain wrong stuff. In the book of second chapter of Genesis, Satan was just giving a little bit of truth incorrectly to Adam and Eve and got them completely off track by not telling them the full truth. But it was so appealing to them. And he was working on their five senses, their taste, their sight, their feel, their smell, all of these kind of things. They were attracted to his benevolence of purpose, but he was really a con artist. And so we got to be very careful that you got to go back to the real source, not to what just a person says.
Right.
Go back to the source of and ask really hard questions. I believe that a prudent person that's going to have joy in their life is asking hard questions and making good, prudent decisions all the time and not falling for a lot of the facade of wealth and greatness and spirituality. Very dangerous.
Very true. Thank you for answering that with the utmost honesty and transparency. I appreciate that very much. I had a thought while you were speaking, and to piggyback off of the discussion on the word and on particular passages. I remember growing up and reading the Bible at various stages and, picking out my favorite things. And of course, like anyone else that liked to read, your favorite area was Proverbs. And so you enjoyed the Proverbs and, and that was pretty much, the general area that I stayed in until, I got a little older. And then I was like, oh, let's look at, Book of Ruth, Book of, all of these other areas. Solomon, of course, everyone was all about Solomon. Song of Solomon, right? and then I kind of stopped and I, went various ways and did various things. And then, of course, you find your way back, right, to your core. And recently interviewed someone maybe about a month or two ago, and they said that their message to humanity was to read the Bible front to back, beginning to end. And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's a great goal. But then now, and with you, but also with other people, I start hearing things and I'm like, the way that we receive information and the way that we process completely different at different stages of life. So I'm very curious, and I'm sure everyone else is as well, but just very curious to go back and reread and see if I view and interpret the same way that I would have in previous moments. But I'm sure it's different. I'm sure it's totally different. So I look forward to it.
Vanessa, I encourage people to realize that the book of the Bible itself is, because it's all these, it's a combined source of books. And so to start with the book of Genesis and not know the first 5 books is the law of Old Testament children of Israel. It's there to help them, guide them. If you're into the Jewish tradition, that's called the Pentateuch. Then there's a whole section of the Bible that would be called the literature, like the Psalms and the Proverbs and the Song of Solomon's. It's great wisdom, but you've got to also look at it in the context of other things that are going on, because they're one-liners or they're poetry that helps you express yourself. And I tell people many times, if you're going to start with the Bible, don't start with the highest level of chemistry. Start with something you can understand. Just start simple. And that's why so many people go to, say, the book of John, because it was written about 60 years after Jesus was on earth, but it was written for the whole world. And John was trying to say, based on what happened, I'm trying to help anybody understand it. It's written for anybody could understand the book of John. Now you can go to another book that John wrote, and it gets a little bit horrific because you don't know the context of it. It's called the book of Revelation. It scares people to death. But it's not showing the Jesus that walked on earth. It's showing the new Jesus of the future. And it's a very different portion. So no, don't start settling in on the book of Revelation, but go to something simple where it starts with where we're at. And we can not pick and choose the books, but we pick and choose where we're at in our growth. And so, yes, I want to be, I love the Old Testament stories, and people love the Old Testament stories. But they weren't there just to be stories. They were there as guidance and direction to an actual living group of people that needed those stories. So, yes, start the Bible, use the Bible as your tool of guidance, but then get a little bit of help along the way of what am I going to read and why do I read this now? I read through the whole Bible a few times, where you start in Genesis by January 1st and you end up in Revelation by the end of December. I don't encourage that, because you're just reading words and you don't know the context. And you've got to be thinking all the time, who was this written to? Why was it written? What was the purpose behind it? What was the circumstances? Those are cultural dynamics that were there, because they weren't written just for us. They were written for people that needed that at the time it was written. So, but it has got wisdom all over the place and guidance all over the place, and you will never go wrong in landing in there. But I typically help people get into something that they can relate to. And the book of John is a classic example. Now, you can read all the great stories, and you can talk about Daniel in the lion's den, and those are all great stories that all happened there. But they weren't there just for the stories. It gets you context of what was happening at the time when those books were written.
Right.
So, dive in and have a good time.
Yeah, really. The Psalms, the Proverbs, and the Song of Solomon, that was my jam. So I do want to transition into hearing about what it is that you're doing and what you do, but I want to ask you in a very different way. So just be prepared. So tell us your why behind your current work, and then tell us what you do.
The why behind and what I do. The why is I want people to learn to live a fulfilling life every single day. I want them to know, number one, that they are actually stewards of a king, and that they have the right to implement a job description of that king, and life can be transformative every single day. That's why, I'm doing a lot of what I'm doing. Now, in the middle of doing all of that, I run into the the realities of what life does to us as people. I serve on boards. I chair 3 of them, nonprofit boards. One of them, like I chair a board for, I've got preschoolers in the Philippines. We got 12 schools going in the Philippines now with a little thing called Little Feet and Friends. I mean, it's really simple, but it's helping preschoolers in a crisis situation learn to thrive and become good in school. Now, there's spiritual dynamics to it, but the real motivation is helping preschoolers get started in school. Or, another organization I'm with is called Santa Claus Incorporated. Believe it or not, Santa Claus has a nonprofit in the United States. Started in 1951, and it's been around for years. We're helping 260,000 kids a year. Those are kids that are caught in the mainstream of garbage in our culture. And they do not know what's going on, but they need shoes, they need backpacks, they need toys, they need to be loved, they need clothing, they need bedding. We're looking for stuff that those kids need because they're caught in the lemon squeezer. And so that organization is very humanitarian. It is not intended to be a Christian organization in that sense, but it's helping kids survive in the midst of chaos. And then I'm involved in other things as well. So what my involvement is, no matter where I'm touching, I am supporting the idea that I'm working with other stewards to make life a reality and a possibility for others. So last week I was in Orlando, Florida, and I was speaking to 40 people for a few days back there. And we were talking about how we can stimulate others to be involved in worthy things. But it's always around how can I help you become a good steward of what God has entrusted to you? First of all, that you believe you are a steward. And secondly, practicalities. How do you live out a life every single day that's fulfilling, full of joy, and full of purpose? That's in essence of what I do.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off again. I'm just like an interrupting cow today. Were you at Podfest? In Orlando?
I did attend a Podfest for a day. Yeah.
Oh, I was there the whole time. Oh my goodness.
I was there for one day. The book I have is with Morgan James Publishers. So I was there one day with them, but I was speaking at other places and I had other obligations I had to do. So I was not attending all of Podfest because I'm a guest on more than I am trying to get one going. So
yeah.
But yeah,
yeah.
I was there. So you were there too, huh, Vanessa?
We were in the same place. That's amazing. We probably passed each other. Didn't even know. 2 ships passing in the day. I loved it.
There was a lot of people there, and I was there the first day, and I was, visiting a lot of the stuff that was going on and meeting people, but I had to get off into other things. So I was there though for the first day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And, shout out to Podfest. They're amazing. We'll put their link in the description for next year so people can go to that. And then they do things all year long in different cities. So yes,
they do.
First year for me, everyone says, it's like a water hose, a fire hose you're trying to drink out of. Totally is. But there is so much to do, so much to see. And then there's more than just podcasters there. You have all kinds of folks from various industries and verticals. And it really is so amazing. Wow. I cannot believe you were there. That's awesome. You said Orlando and my ears went up.
We were in the same building for 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah. We might have passed each other on the way to the coffee cart.
We probably did. Yeah, probably so.
If you happen to see someone with my face and little wolf ears, I had wolf ears on the first day. That was me. I kept forgetting that I had them on. And so I'm like, why are people? Oh, you're right. The ears. Yeah. So that was me. But I'm so glad. Wow. Nice to meet you. Maybe I'll see you next year if you go next year.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, I got to get through this year first.
Thank you so very much. And thanks for being a guest on Humanity 2.0 podcast. Everyone be sure to visit the description so you can find the links to Larry's website, as well as visit his book online. And just as a final thought from Humanity 2.0 podcast, we encourage you to be kind to other humans, but also to take a moment and reflect in whatever way that is for you. If you are someone who reads the Bible, or maybe you don't, maybe you think about picking it up and seeing what you can find. But above above all, be good humans and take a moment for yourself and try to just be in the moment and see where that takes you, but also help other people. That's the end goal, is helping other humans and lifting them up. So see you guys next week on another episode of Humanity 2.0 podcast. Say bye, Larry. Humanity 2.0 podcast is brought to you by Vanessa The Vivacious Productions. Want to be a guest? Visit the link in the episode description for future guest opportunities. Ready to podcast like a boss? Join Podmatch and begin your Podmatch journey via the link also listed in the description. Subscribe to Humanity 2.0 podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Follow and help support the show by buying Humanity a cup of coffee via buymeacupofcoffee.com/Humanity 2.0 podcast. Above all, don't forget to be good to other humans. See you guys next time.